All right. Well, welcome everyone to our Who Won It session where we're going to discuss um, entering the American Advertising Awards here in Northeast Pennsylvania. I am your president, Dan Kimbrough. I've got with me Autumn, who is our VP. Hello, Autumn. And then Taryn, who is on our board as well, is one of our general directors and helps out with our social media. Hello, Taryn. Karen is muted, so you can't hear her. So we'll just move on. So I want to go through before we get into the different categories. Talk about the award competition itself overall, some of the eligibility requirements, and the things that go along with the judging as well. And so, first off, to be fair, all the work that's done for the competition has to be produced between January 1st and December 31st, 2024. So you're looking at this calendar year, and the work has to be actual paid creative work, unless you're submitting in the pro bono category or the advertising industry self-promotion categories, or it's student work, which means that the work has to be actual work that was submitted to clients and actually used throughout the course of your client's actual day-to-day process when it comes to their advertising. It can't be work that's conceptual or done to help pitch an idea to a client. It has to be actual paid work going out that way. Also, as far as the demographic, the DMA that you're going to submit to, you have to be in the NEPA DMA. And so because our district is a little weird where we don't have as many clubs covering Pennsylvania, it's everyone who's in NEPA is allowed to submit to us. And then outside of that, as long as you're not too close to another club, which would be looking at the Erie down towards Lehigh Valley or getting up towards Rochester, you can technically still submit to us as well. What would happen though is we would just do a quick review if you're a little far away and let our district actually make that decision and decide which club you would go into, but it would most likely be here in Northeast Pennsylvania. And so again, as long as you're essentially, if you're watching, as long as you get WBRE or WNEP, we're the club you're going to want to submit to because we're your actual DMA. And then moving on from there, one of the big things that we ran into last year that we want to make sure folks understand is that all of our judging is done blindly, and that's done from two sides. From us, the judges that we pull aren't from this market, so they won't know your companies or anything about you, but they are from similar sized markets. And so I believe we're like 147 in the overall DMAs, and so we're looking at markets that are between 120 and 170 so that they understand sort of the size and scope of our work. But the other part of that being blind submissions is that you're making sure that everything that identifies you as the production company or the creative is pulled out of the work. And so if there's any credits, if there's any tags, any of that nature, on the back end with your uploads, making sure all of your branding is removed from everything, or you will end up being disqualified. And so we just want to make sure that you understand that the blind judging works two ways. You want to make sure that what you submit doesn't have anything that identifies you, and then that we're making sure that the judges don't know who you are as well, so that everything's on the up and up. None of our board is on the judging panel, or again anyone from this region. So it is truly a fair blind judge that's being done, and all the judges are from outside of this market area. So you're good to go there. So, and then the last thing when it comes to judging overall is the forwarding process. If your entry receives a gold Addy, it is automatically sent on, no cost to you. We take care of that. If you win a silver Addy, it's up to you to decide to forward those on to the district competition, but there will be a fee for that one as well. So those are some of the early questions that we get for everything. I wanted to make sure that we got those out of the way. Taryn and Autumn, anything that I didn't go over, anything you would add?
I think just with like keeping everything not branded, there is the exception if it's self-promotion.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that
Yep.
out there. But
Yep. And so there are those two categories. There's the category again, the self-promotion or industry industry self-promotion. That category, you're allowed to have your things branded that are in there. The only other real exception in our market, it tends to only really be WVAA. But if you're the producer and sort of the distributor as well, so like it's going out on your airwaves, therefore it's embedded that way, that we understand. But outside of that, we want to again make sure that it's done in a way so that you're not branding yourself or putting yourself there. So anything else before we move on? Taryn, you said you had a couple questions you may have had.
Yes, I know in the past we have had students or their professors ask, if sorry, my dog's barking. If, I didn't win an award or something like that, will I get feedback on what was wrong with my submission?
Yes, so that's another good one. We don't give feedback on the submissions from the judges only because they are burning through a whole lot. So sometimes the feedback is a little short and is very to the point as far as them getting through everything. But also we've run into issues in the past as well where people have tried to sort of argue or go back after the judges. And so to sort of keep the competition running smoothly and to protect the judges, they are volunteering their time and going through and doing this. We don't submit those out. I know for the student competition, that's one of those students usually want feedback, but it's just the way that AAF does it. We don't give back feedback from the awards. So answer your question.
Yes, absolutely. I think that was all I had.
All right. Anything else from you, Autumn, maybe or?
I think we're good, but your screen is no longer being shared.
Yep. I'm gonna bring it back up now. So, yep, I didn't know how many questions there were. So, all right. So, getting into the actual the setup of categories and things that we had, we wanted to go through some of the categories and highlight some of the different areas that some folks don't realize. One of the things about the award show and competition, there's 7 main categories that we're working with, but there are a lot of subcategories. And one of the things to keep in mind is that sometimes getting your category right can be the difference in your judging scores overall, making sure that you're in the right category. So what we wanted to do was just sort of go through and highlight some of the different categories and things that exist in those, make sure I'm on the right screen. And so the first category we're going to go over is our sales and marketing category. And this is going to be anything that has to do with sales and marketing, promotions, things of that nature that you're used to seeing in the marketing world. This also includes those stationary annual reports, thinking about menus. If you're thinking of you have clients that are in the service industry, if you've done menus or menu boards, if you put together sales or promotion kits for a client, all of that falls under sales and marketing as well. You can submit individual pieces or campaigns. And the one thing to remember about for any category, the individual piece of the campaign, a campaign is multiple of an individual piece as long as the individual piece meets the categories, it meets the eligibility for the individual. So say you're doing an outdoor campaign, as long as all the individual elements meet the individual elements requirement, you could submit those as a campaign. But again, it could be a newsletter. It could also be a book design. We see that a lot of that in the student competition, magazine and book layout designs. We get those that are submitted for student work. And so as professional level as well, if you're working with authors and things of that nature, that's an option for you to look at as well. There's apparel that goes under sales and marketing. It can also be mixed use or the actual layout inside of stores. It could be direct mail as well, even though we're submitting it digitally, you can submit the files from it. And so, and that sales and marketing category, it covers a lot of different things. And again, I think the one that a lot of people overlook are like cards, invitations, and actual stationery. Even though we're in a digital world, stationery is still a big one that people tend to forget. So if you're working on projects for your clients and you've got sales marketing that are actual like stationery and things of that nature, that can be submitted into that sales and marketing category because that's where it's at. But you can also submit it into the next main category we have, which is print advertising, which again, this is where that notion of where you submit it really comes down to the details. Yes, it's printed, but that doesn't mean that that may be the only area that it can go into. When we're thinking about printing, again, this comes down to magazines. It can be newspaper layout and things of that nature. This is a smaller category, but again, if you're submitting into that sales and marketing, think about doubling up in the print and advertising marketing category as well, because there are a few that are in there. This one is a big one again with again newspapers, magazines. If you're doing brochures, if you're having an event, if your clients are having an event where they're having you create physical product that are going to be given out to people, this counts as print advertising. And so anything that was duplicated in the real world, you can submit into this category as well. Moving on in order is out of home and ambient media. The one that we see in this category often, I think it was a couple years ago, McCarthy Tire, I forgot the group that did it, but McCarthy Tire was this client. And this was cool because it's the literal, all of the decals and layout inside of the building. So when you walk into a building, thinking about the design and the graphic design, everything that goes into that, that is what we're talking about when we talk about out of home and ambient media. This can also be billboards, posters, anything that's seen out in the real world. That's where this would come to. Think about events as well. If there's posters or things of that nature, the execution of an event can be a campaign as well, and things of that. And so if you're doing event marketing, looking at installations and things of that nature falls under your out of home and ambient marketing. Um, Moving on, give me 1 second to catch up to myself. Then we also have online and interactive. This can be consumer websites, B2B websites, or even micro websites that you may create for clients. It could be apps, video games, virtual reality as well. And so for students, if you're watching, if you're working in any esports classes where you're sort of building out game environments, if you're building apps in your marketing and branding classes, this is the category for that as well. If you're working with clients who need an app or things of that nature, this is the category where you're going to find that online and interactive. Again, and virtual reality is one of the new ones. And so computer generated graphics in 3D are what you're going to find in this category. And then some more of the traditional online for web banners, website takeover campaigns, blog series, and things of that nature are all found here. So before I move on, any questions from Dawn or Taryn? Not Dawn, Autumn. I called you the opposite of your name. That's funny. Nope. All right.
Nope.
All right, we're going to move on then to my favorite, which is film, video, and sound. And this is going to be anything that we've seen on television, heard, movie theaters, on radio, sound, anywhere of that nature. This is going to be, again, you can do individual spots or you can do campaigns. And in this category, specifically, campaigns are 2 to 4 pieces. And so if you've got a commercial campaign that's 3 different spots that you've put together, you could enter each individual spot, and you could enter the campaign as a whole separately as well. And that's something that we've seen in the past where some of the winners, they may not win the individual one, but the campaign may be where they end up winning overall. So be thinking of that. And this is your traditional audio and radio advertising, single spots and campaigns, television advertising. And then in the online, the internet commercial category, podcast is where you'll find, that's where we find podcast. So if you're a local podcaster, you can submit a single episode or multiples in that campaign setup as well. If you're doing a webisode series, if you're still doing those things, this is where that falls onto as well. And so any things that end up online, again, I mean, for film, video, sound, it's online. That's what falls into there. Also, music videos, trailers, in-theater announcements, and slideshows all count for film, video, and sound. And so if you have a client that you're doing some promotional work that's going to happen running in the theaters during the holiday season or at the beginning of the summer, that work will be submitted here as well. So. And then cross-platform is our next category, which is mainly our integrated campaigns. And so if you're entering this one, it's mainly going to be campaigns in which it's going to be things in which we're looking at your video, we're looking at the out-of-home marketing, we're looking at something physical in that nature as well. And so this is mainly campaign work that you're going to be submitting. And I believe this category is capped at up to 10 pieces. And so cross-platform is all campaign-based. And the idea being that you're doing some sort of integrated multi-level and multimedia marketing, and that's where you're going to put this one at. So, and then I believe, yep. And then our last sort of category, which isn't really a category, it's sort of a hodgepodge, is our elements of advertising. This is the one category where there can be some double dipping in areas where it normally wouldn't be. If you're doing self-promotion or the PSAs, anything that falls under self-promotion, PSA, or I think it's considered the corporate responsibility, those can only be submitted in those categories. So if you're doing a PSA for a nonprofit, that cannot be submitted into the video category because it's a PSA. And so it's technically considered separate in how it's put together in its concept. But under elements of marketing, let's say that you created a logo for that client. This is where you could submit that PSA or the industry self-promotion and to submit different categories. And so there's copywriting, there's logo design, there's cinematography, there's illustration. And so this is looking at the individual elements of the ad that you put together. And this is one of those categories where things that normally wouldn't be allowed to double dip are allowed to, but we're looking at the specific sort of focused in level of it. And so So logo designs, infographics, black and white photos versus still on photos versus color photos, cinematography, music that's used, whether you're using CGI or the way that you edit videos together. All of those things fall under the idea of elements of advertising, which is a way that you can sort of double dip. And so the piece itself may not win, but your cinematography may be something that's outstanding. And so you submit it under that category specifically. And so that's the main categories that we have when we're talking about the competition overall. And so if you have any questions after watching and sitting through this, please feel free to reach out to us at info@aafnepa.org. And then keep a lookout online. We're working right now on getting a venue locked in for the actual award show, but it will be February 28th. It's going to be a good time. We are working on a Clue/murder mystery themed event. And so we've got a couple of the surprises in store for you that day. So if you're, once you get everything submitted, keep an eye out for the award show, get your tickets and join us there as well. So
Yes.
Taryn, anything else?
I just want to point out that our early bird discount runs through December 20th. So make sure that you are getting those submissions in early. The early bird discount is $20 off of each submission you make. So make sure that you are getting those in early. We will definitely be keeping you up to date on social media and via email with our regular deadline as well. And our late entries, the deadline for that too. But again, early bird runs through December 20th for a $20 discount per entry.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if there's nothing else, I want to thank you all for your time today and popping in and watching this video. Again, if you have any questions, info@aafnepa.org, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. But if not, we look forward to your entries, and we will see you on February 28th. Thank you all very much.